Hi, everyone, and welcome to Prowritingaid 101 for business writers. I'm Micah McGuire, Prowritingaid's Growth Marketing Manager, and today I am joined by Tom Wilde, our Head of Client Solutions. It is wonderful to see you all here today. We've got a great session planned. For today's agenda, we are going to be covering some of the most important reports for business writers, including the summary report, the readability report, the style report, the sticky sentences report, and our real-time checker and goals sidebar. If we have time, we'll also be covering a report known as our all repeats report and some of the tools that are actually outside of our reports, including our style guide. But we do ultimately want this to be driven by what you guys would like to know. So if at any time during the session you have questions, please go ahead and pop those into the Q&A box. We will try to get to as many as we can at our Q&A at the end of the session. If for any reason your question is not answered, please feel free to send it to hello, H-E-L-L-O, at prowritingaid.com, and we will make sure to get back to you as soon as we can. Just put in the subject line that you were part of today's 101 session. All right, well, Tom, I think that covers all of my housekeeping. Let's go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you, Micah, and welcome everybody. Great to have you with us for this 101 session today. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let's get straight into Prowritingaid, and for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to be looking at, sorry, I'm just going to trying to share my screen. I've got technical issues already. There we go. That should be better. We're going to be looking at our web editor integration. Now, Prowritingaid exists in many different forms. We have many integrations, the idea being that it is with you wherever you write. It is the editor on your shoulder, and you take it with you wherever you write. So whether you're using Microsoft Office products, whether you are working in web applications, whether you are on a desktop, you can use a version of Prowritingaid, and they all look and feel exactly the same, offer you the same functionality. What you can see here is a range of buttons across the top of the screen, and we're going to dive into some of these. Hopefully some of you will have already done your own research, already got to grips with some of these. But let's just, for the sake of those that may not have, we'll dive into a bit more detail. And like Micah said, we're ready to take questions on any particular areas you've got. Later on in the session, we'll switch over to show you what it looks like in a Chrome extension. And if we've got time, we'll also show you the Word add-in, just to give you some familiarity with those versions. All right, first thing I'm going to do, just a bit of housekeeping around settings. Prowritingaid works in English, but many different variations of English. You can set your variation of English here under settings in the web editor. Changing that setting there will apply to other integrations that you've got. You can see I can set it as a general English, British English, US, Australian, or Canadian English. It's a really simple place to start. But where the magic happens is in the reports. And one of my customers describes Prowritingaid as the second pair of digital eyes. I like the term, the editor on your shoulder. And if we turn on this real-time checker, which is the place to start, it immediately starts tracking and looking for those mistakes, but also improvements that you can make in your writing. So some of these are subjective, some of these are stylistic issues or readability issues that improve the transfer of information from the page to your reader's brain, making it as trouble-free and kind of removing the barriers to that. So you can see that as I was talking, that little check box, that little counter here is counted up to 36. That means it's found 36 possible improvements in this document. Each of those relates to one of the colored underlines. Those colors are color-coded. In fact, if I go over to this side panel or the sidebar and click on the Improvements tab, you can see I can filter on those. And I've got spelling, grammar, style, and passive voice filters. So if I want to just look at one particular area, I can do that there. We're going to look at everything right now, and we're going to dive straight in and do some simple edits. If you hover over any of those highlights, the correction appears. So this is obviously a spelling issue. And I can just make the change by clicking on this green box anywhere, and it will implement the change for me on the screen. Moving along, I've got a missing determiner. Okay, so let's put that in there as well. If I click on this little arrow, it actually automatically moves me to the next issue. Okay, all of is a great readability enhancement. All of often adds nothing to your writing. Remove it and it won't change the context of your sentence, but you're saving your reader 2 words. And over time, those 2 words saved here, 3 words saved there, really save a lot of time and effort for your reader. As we continue, you'll see that if I show you here, we've got an information icon in this pop-up. And that's really important because at Prowritingaid, we're not just about fixing your document. We want to help you build skills and capabilities in the long term. We want to help you become better writers. And we appreciate that writing is a very broad and personal subject. Many of us don't know all the vagaries of grammar and punctuation. Here, we build in learning articles. So if I click on this information icon, and you'll notice this point is about the passive voice. Okay, so the passive voice is terribly overused in business. It's not incorrect, but we overuse it, and using the passive voice makes the transfer of information to our readers' brains more difficult than it needs to be. The active voice is how we engage with writing more easily. So if I click on that information icon, it opens a contextual learning window that tells me all about the passive voice and the active voice and how to transfer from one to the other. And you'll even notice a little video embedded where we use Jackie Chan quotes to help explain the difference between the passive and the active. So it's kind of reinforcing your learning as we go. And you can even link to full, deeper articles too. For the time being, you can see that the tool is using its machine learning to try and understand the context of the sentence, and it's presented me with 4 alternative options. So rather than a number of meetings have been held, I'm going to say we have held a number of meetings. It just delivers the information in that subject, verb, object way that our readers expect. Okay, so you can see I can continue making small incremental improvements with this real-time checkout. By the time I reach the end of the document, I've got a cleaner, more concise, better piece of writing. These scores on the right-hand side are critical. They are your goals, and that's how you those are metrics presented to you that tell you how you are doing against certain targets. So we can see here for grammar and spelling, for example, I've got a target of 80% or higher to hit, and I'm hitting 58%, so I'm below target. And that's why I've got this little, the scores, the check mark is in orange, and I've got this little exclamation mark too. If I scroll down to other scores, let's pick up, let's have a look, passive voice. Actually, so my passive voice index is doing pretty well. I'm at 11.1 and my score should be less than 25. So for passive voice, I'm on target. That's how you tell the difference between those where you're on target and those where you've still got work to do. These scores are dynamic. So as I make changes, if I accept some of these changes or even ignore some of the changes, you'll see this score creeps up. So we're already at 55%. Remove a couple of others. I'm going to ignore that one. Change a number for several. Change a spelling error there. Keep going, and you can see it's climbing 57%, 61% now. So it's a really great way of getting in real-time feedback about your writing. And that's important because it's very difficult to put your finger on how good you are as a writer and where you need to improve. You'll notice I've got this set at general. However, try and set your document type as close as possible to what you're writing. So actually my better setting here would probably be a sales email, okay? And by doing that, it's going to present a different range of metrics that are specifically relevant to that document type. So it's going to be more, it's going to be more relevant to what you're doing. Okay, so we get the idea. Real time is a high level pass where we're looking at grammar, spelling, readability, and punctuation. What we want to do next is get into the detail, and the place to start with that is the summary report, because the summary report is going to help point you to which of these reports you should be running. The point is,
Tom,
yeah, sorry, Micah, go for it.
Just I wanted to jump in that oftentimes our users do ask us, when's the best time to be using the real-time checker versus when's the best time to be breaking things down into using the summary reports and using separate reports. We usually say that it depends on the document length and at what point you're working on that document. So if you're writing an email and you're writing that in real time, that's probably going to be a better case for you to use that real-time checker, because likely, first of all, it's an email. Hopefully it'll be fairly short. We would hope you would not be writing War and Peace in an email. And on top of that, you're also writing it in real time. So you can make those corrections as you're writing. Whereas if, let's say, you've got a 10, 15-page report that maybe you started working on at the beginning of the quarter kind of thing, if you're coming back to edit that report, it may be better to work from this summary report and individual report perspective, simply because sometimes with long documents especially, the improvements within the real-time checker can almost feel a little overwhelming. We do try to make it as easy as possible to filter things out. Tom, you might want to show the improvement sidebar and kind of our filtering that we do have on that focus. So just as you can see there with what Tom has pointed out is that you can check and uncheck any category. So let's say you are feeling a little overwhelmed by the number of corrections, you can always focus on one category at a time, or let's say there's not that many, you can focus it all at once. But again, from that editing perspective, it is often easier to start with the summary report, just because that's going to exactly pinpoint where your document is going to need work, and Tom will show you that in just a second.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. Thanks for adding that. Yeah, let's dive into that summary report. So here we go. It's a really rich report, and I advise any of you who are using Prowritingaid for the first time or first few times, take time to digest this and understand it and build it into your writing habit. You'll see you've got 3 upfront scores. You've got a grammar score, spelling score, and style score. We can see I'm on target for spelling, but grammar and style, I'm way off target. And then it gives me a bunch of metrics for the areas where I'm doing well. So these are all on target, and I can click through to any of these. If I click on, let's say, readability grade, it'll take me to the readability section of this report. As I said, it's a detailed report. There's a lot here, but find the bits that are relevant to you and find the bits that tackle your weaknesses and deliver value for you. So you can see under the readability check, although I'm on target you can still see that I've got a problem with a few very difficult paragraphs. So they're very difficult to read. There's a low readability score on those paragraphs. We'll take a look at those in a minute. Jumping back up, if I look underneath the areas where my document's looking great, I can see all the areas that needs more work. Some of these are going to really stand out. Grammar and style, I definitely need to look at. Business jargon definitely needs focus, sentence length, glue index, and we'll come back to some of these in a bit more detail. So, like I said, build that into your process, take time to understand it. You will find you're probably using 10 to 20% of the summary report on a regular basis. There's also, as with all parts of Prowritingaid, it's built for all writers. So there is stuff here that is relevant for creative writers and not business writers. So you can kind of filter that out and know where to focus your attention. So we're going to dive in. Yeah, Micah.
With that focused attention, you'll also come to learn as you check the summary report, which reports you tend to run the most. So guys, if you're looking at this top bar and going, oh my gosh, you've got what, 20 reports there, something like that, and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by that, don't worry. We don't recommend running every report on anything really that you write. I can't imagine any scenario that anyone would be running all, 20 plus reports. You'll find the ones that kind of tend to cover your weaknesses. So in my case, a lot of times I'll need to run the readability report because I might be mostly good on most of my paragraphs, but have a couple that need a little bit of tweaking. Whenever you go to that summary report and look at that area of where your writing might need work, you are going to find that consistently over and over, you'll probably have anywhere between about, I'd say, 3 to 5 reports that you're regularly running. And that's just all comes down to your personal writing style.
Yeah, that's exactly it. 3 to 5, bang on, I think. So we're going to jump in straight away with style. Style and grammar, for quite a few of the reports work, so very similar to the real-time checker insofar as they provide highlights in the document with corrections that you can accept there and then. But also in the sidebar here, they're grouping together your mistakes or improvements by category. So I'm not going to go into style guide items because these relate to custom style guide rules that I've built for my writing, and I'll show you those a little bit later. But let's have a look at a few of these. So business jargon phrases, a classic. Here are some that it's found in the document: cutting edge, bandwidth, drill down into. We can remove all of these and save the reader time and effort. And I can just go to them by clicking this arrow. It'll take me to that round pace here, offer a suggestion. I can ignore it, or I can accept it. I'm going to accept that one. Bandwidth. Okay, so we've got capacity or spare capacity. Yeah, we'll accept that too. We've got long subordinate clauses. I've got passive voice verbs, or passive verbs, sorry. I've even got adverbs. So adverbs, just quite often, they are overused. And again, you can save your reader time and effort by removing them. If we take a look at this one, certainly, it's not adding anything to that sentence. We can just remove it. So there's a lot in the style report and there's a lot in the grammar report that you can just change category by category to improve your document. Let's have a quick look at grammar. Okay, so 6 grammar issues. And if there were spelling issues, you would also see them highlighted here as well. Let's have a look at solely as the first one. Okay, so I've got a missing comma after subordinate clause. So really useful help there, something we tend to gloss over when we're proofing our own work. Next one. What do we got? Oh, we've got a comma splice. Okay, so we're going to remove that. We're going to make 2 separate sentences rather than using a comma splice. Don't forget, if you don't know what a comma splice is, read all about it and watch a short video there. Okay, some of these reports work more on an advisory basis, and Mike has already mentioned readability. So let's jump in and have a look at readability. Readability looks at your readability scores. There are many different readability scores or metrics used out there. Here are 4 that we use. Probably the Flesch Reading Ease and Flesch Kincaid grade are the most well known. And what we're looking at here is readability of the entire document, but then we break it down paragraph by paragraph. We know this document is just about on target as an entire document, but we also know there is at least one very difficult to read paragraph, and we can go straight to that by clicking on the arrow. Here it is. Now, it's up to you as the writer. You understand the context of this paragraph better than any machine possibly could. You need to improve the readability. And to do that, to improve readability scores, you're looking to do 2 things. Number 1, you need to reduce the average number of words per sentence. And number 2, reduce the average number of syllables per word. That's how readability is measured. So effectively, you're using shorter sentences and simpler vocabulary. And as you can see, there's quite a lot I could work on here. Words like expeditious, intermediary, transformation. There's quite a lot I could do here to break this down into shorter sentences as well. And then when I've done that, I just run the readability report again and see how it's improved.
And oftentimes, if you're struggling with a paragraph, let's say you're looking at it from a perspective and going, hey, I really don't see how I could improve the readability here. Take a look at both the style report and the report we're about to cover, which is the sticky sentences report, because oftentimes these 3 reports do kind of work together. You had seen some of the readability improvements that are present in that style report. Sometimes just by catching those in the style report and just by reducing the number of sticky sentences, you'll find that your paragraph readability also increases as well. So that's kind of an extra little tip to kind of help you out with readability, because it can be difficult sometimes especially if you've looked at your own paragraph about 10, 15 times before.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump into sticky sentences right now. One of my favorite reports, and it's unique to Prowritingaid. So sticky sentences is looking for what we call glue words. Glue words are the 200 most commonly used words in the English language. So they're typically your prepositions, your articles. They are words that have a purpose. They glue together the working words of a sentence, but on their own, they don't provide context. They don't do much of the work in the sentence. And our research tells us that if your sentences have more than a certain percentage of glue words, they become sticky and they slow your reader down. So if you remove or reduce the number of glue words, the likelihood is that your reader is going to understand what you're telling them without having to work so hard. You can see we categorize sticky and semi-sticky sentences, and we can find examples listed here. I can jump straight to that. You can see the number of glue words there. 12 words out of 17 are glue words in this sentence. And you can see it's also working. This is a beta or beta feature within the tool. It's working trying to present alternative sentences or ways you could phrase that. It's not quite getting it right in this example. So we still encourage you to do a manual edit here. And to be honest, with a sentence like that, just wanted to circle back about the project we talked about around the last month or so. Well, really, you could just say, you know, just catching up, something really simple and to the point. Likewise, we've got some semi-sticky sentences. Everyone on the board with the plan. Everyone is on board with the plan, and we believe your company is the right vendor to carry out these efforts. You could shorten that to just saying, we're all on board, and we want to go ahead with you, or we think you're the right vendor. So it's a really good reminder of just cutting out a lot of the, well, the stickiness, a lot of the fluff in those sentences. Okay, sticky sentences, readability, definitely recommend using them. I think we've got time to dive into a couple of others. One, we don't often cover in a 101, but every client demo I do loves this report, and it's acronyms. So I'm only quickly going to touch on this. Acronym report looks at how you're using acronyms and whether you're using them correctly. The correct use of acronyms should be that when you use an acronym, you spell it out the first time you use it, unless you're absolutely certain your reader knows what you're talking about. So here we report that you're using 4 acronyms and they're used 4 times. None of them have been introduced. So none of them in this situation. Now, these are examples that you may not need to introduce, but really this is a good reminder of the acronyms that you've probably missed and you haven't highlighted and haven't mentioned. So it's looking, and it will recognize where you've spelt out in brackets after the acronym what the acronym stands for. So use the acronym report. But the one we promised or we talked about earlier showing was all repeat. And it does take a few seconds to run because it's doing a lot of work in the background, but all repeats is a great example of what machines are, where they're far better than the human eye, and that is for spotting patterns. So the all repeats check, the all repeats check is looking for where you're using words or multi-word phrases repeatedly. So I can see that I'm using a word like team 6 times, but equally, I can see I'm using phrases like to carry out twice or to move forward. I mean, that's a classic bit of business jargon, to move forward, and I'm using it twice in a relatively short email. Those are the kind of things that contribute to your reader switching off. If I navigate to them, it'll actually give me some alternatives to use. So it's presenting some alternative synonyms, different verbs that I could use, just to bring a bit of variety to my writing, because that helps keep your reader engaged. So use the all repeats report. Now, there are others that do a similar job. So overuse does a very similar job, but what that's looking for is comparing how frequently you're using words compared to published averages. I like all repeats because it really focuses on my writing, but lots of particularly creative writers are big fans of overuse. And
the way I kind of think of the difference between these two reports is all repeats is comparing your writing against itself. Overused words is primarily comparing your writing to everyone else's. So we all know we have certain crutch words. That is one of mine. You know, I will use that probably 15 times in a single paragraph kind of thing. So anytime I'm running the overused words report, it'll flag, you know, you've used that too many times. You might want to consider reducing X number of times. So that's where it comes in useful, is whenever you're trying to find out, okay, hey, how am I comparing to everybody else's writing. Again, the all repeats is fantastic if you just want to make sure that you're not talking the same phrases over and over again, essentially.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Thanks, Micah. And okay, so that's giving you a high level view. A couple of other things I wanted to point out just before we move on. One is the word explorer that's built into Prowritingaid. It's a tool that a lot of people don't know about. Basically, if I double click any word in a document, I say any word, most words in a document. Let's try another one. Okay, there we go. It will present a range of synonyms that I could use in place of that word. So again, great way of just introducing a bit of variety to my writing. If I click on the word explorer itself, it will open a much deeper resource that gives me really detailed definitions of that particular word. It's noun, verb, noun form, verb form. You can see all the other things. It's got a thesaurus here. It's got synonyms. It goes into detail about spelling, pronunciation, even collocation. So I can look at what adjectives might be hyphenated and used before or after that particular word. So if you're interested in writing, if you're passionate about words and you want to broaden your vocabulary, the Word Explorer is a really good place to go.
It's also great for helping with those tip of the tongue moments, because oftentimes you may be able to remember a word that might be located near another, and that's where that collocations dictionary can really come in handy.
Yeah, that's right. And then the final one was combo. Combo is a great way of combining a few reports. Now I say a few because if you combine lots of reports, you are going to present a kind of, you're going to be given the machine learning a lot to work on at any one time, and you're going to get a lot of detail back on that screen. So go to your settings. I'm not going to go into it now, but go to your settings and you'll see where you can arrange a checkboxes for your reports. Check the reports you want to run together, maybe style and grammar, and then you can just hit combo and you'll run both of those reports in unison. Okay, and I'm moving on because I know we're already half an hour into it, but I want to get into some of the detail around customization within Prowritingaid, and we're going to look at style guide rules, because I know lots of organizations out there, lots of you will have defined tone of voice guidelines, defined style guidelines, and you want those rules to apply in Prowritingaid. So go to style guides, which you'll find on this left-hand menu. And under style guides, you'll find a list of that you can create personal style guide rules, and also where you can create team style guide rules. So I'm a member of several different teams. You can create team style guide rules, which means they will automatically apply to anyone else that has a linked license to you under a team license. Style guide rules are very, very powerful. They do everything from the very basic find and replace kind of rules to very detailed kind of regex dependent rules. I'm going to show you a couple of really simple examples. Okay, so let's have a look. In the UK, so I'm in the UK, we have a university called the University of Reading, and the brand name is University of Reading. It's not Reading University, and yet many of the staff and students, they use Reading University. So they create a simple kind of find and replace rule where they have a wrong sentence and a sample wrong sentence. So this should say something like, I went to Reading University, and then we have a match. This is the term we want to highlight, and the replacement. So this is what we want to replace the match with. And then the message, please follow our brand guidelines. It's really simple. Test the rule. If it returns green text, that's good. That's passed. If it's red, you've got an issue, and it will highlight where the issue is usually. And then when I save that, if I go back into our document, just create a bit of space, a bit of blank space, and post that sentence, turn on the real-time checker, you'll see there is my rule that I've just created. Like I said, really simple example. Let's go into one that's a little bit deeper. It's one that I use quite a lot, and it's for, here we go, the word impactful. Now in the UK, impactful is what I describe as a or what we describe as a Marmite word. You either love it or you hate it. A lot of people really dislike it because it's a pretty weak adjective. There are many better adjectives you could use. Here's my wrong sentence. And this is a customer that wanted to stop the word impactful being used. Here's my wrong sentence. It's incredibly impactful. Here's my match, impactful. But you'll notice I've got RB and a tilde before it in brackets. That is to pick up an optional adverb. So RB is a POS tag, the parts of speech tag for adverb. And the tilde here makes it a kind of an optional match. So basically, if there is an adverb before impactful, and any adverb used before impactful is going to be totally unnecessary. So if there is an adverb there, it will include it in the match. If there is no adverb there, then it will still match the word impactful anyway. In my replacements, I offer 5 alternative adjectives, and I separate each with an @ symbol, because that means when it's presented in the pop-up, they will be separately clickable entities. And then I create my message. So if we take that, go back into our blank screen, again, create a bit of space. I'm just going to turn the real-time checker off. I'm going to add that twice and remove the adverb from one of them. Let's turn the real-time checker on. There we go. It's highlighted them. There's my message. And here are my 5 separate clickable alternatives. And it's found it regardless of whether it's got an adverb or not. And where it does find the adverb, it includes it in the match. Now, again, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. We've got rules here using just POS tags, parts of speech tags, to define a string of words that have a missing Oxford comma. This is something that if you have an interest in it, you can go as far as you like with the tool. And I think Mike has placed a couple of blog article links in the chat that will help you get started. If you need help, reach out. We're a team of writers, linguists. We love this kind of stuff, so we can help you. We won't automate your full style guide. Well, we can. It's a service we can offer. But most customers just want a little bit of direction, a little bit of help with some rules. But it's a really powerful tool, and I recommend you all give it a go if you've got particular custom rules you want to introduce. Okay, let's move on to the next feature, which is snippets. Snippets is like it is our text expansion tool. So if you're using any template text in any form, so maybe you are sending customer service, customer help emails that have standardized paragraphs or sentences, you can create those as snippets and just drop them into text with a couple of clicks. So here's an example. Here's an email that I've written formatted in rich text. It goes to all new trial users of Prowritingaid Business. And I configure a shortcut. So I just use a really simple shortcut that uses, in this instance, I use the / to proceed the shortcut. When I then go into my document, regardless of where I'm working on Prowritingaid, if I use that shortcut, you'll see it immediately brings up a pop-up with the available snippets that are configured with that shortcut. And I can just select the right one and drop the text straight in. Like I said, that's going to work wherever you're using Prowritingaid. And this is probably a good moment to mention, let's have a quick look at some of those other integrations. So I've got the Chrome extension installed here. I'm using Chrome as my browser. You can see I've got the Chrome extension installed. And if I bring up a Gmail window, so I use Gmail at work, is a Gmail window. Let me just enlarge the text a little bit. There's text taken from a sample report that I've written. And you can see here that it's doing exactly the same. The real-time checker is working. It's got all the pop-ups appearing. I can accept, I can change, I can ignore. I can even open the goals sidebar with the improvement sidebar or the full editor. So here I am in Chrome, but I'm opening the full editor with all of the report functionality. Any changes I make here, I just click on apply changes and it will apply it back into the web application that I'm using. I can see we've got a question come in and chat. Carl, you said, is Prowritingaid an add-in to Word? It is an add-in to Word. Let me show you what it looks like. So here is Prowritingaid in Word. So I've got it installed here as you can see it as a tab on my ribbon. And if I turn on the real-time checker, it's going to do exactly the same as you saw in the web editor. It takes a few seconds. There we go. So I've got the underlines, I've got my goals, I've got my improvement sidebar, and I've got all the reports I can run. Now, you asked, is it possible to use in Excel when describing technical features of mathematical models? Unfortunately not. And I don't think there's any grammar or spell checker that has cracked this. Excel treats text in a very, very different way to Word. So it's a very difficult challenge to get a grammar checker, spell checker working within Excel. What it will do is if you're using tables within Word, it will check there. And if you're embedding those tables from Excel into Word, it will check text, but it won't work natively in Excel. As a side issue, last week we released Prowritingaid everywhere. It's our first native app, and it's built specifically for Windows, although we're releasing a Mac one within the next few weeks. And that, for the first time, gives Prowritingaid access to PowerPoint. So you will have support in PowerPoint, but unfortunately, Excel still remains a challenge we haven't solved. Okay, let's go back. I think that's probably most of the areas I wanted to cover. One last thing to highlight, and this is something we're really proud of. We released just yesterday our team analytics tool dashboard. Now, if you have a team license or you're considering having a team license, this is an administrator function. So administrators within your team will be able to review a team analytics dashboard, which gives them insight into the use of Prowritingaid by the users in that team. You can select your time period. You can see on a day or week-to-week basis how many active users out of your team were using it. You can see the percentage of active users over that entire time period. You can also see the number of improvements. So this is the number of accepted suggestions, as well as some estimations about the cost and time savings that it's helped bring about because of saving you using a professional editor. And then finally up here, you'll see a bias improvements tally as well. So this is where it's catching suggestions or making suggestions for terms that may not be considered inclusive, and it will highlight those and suggest improvements. As I said, it only went live yesterday, so if you have got a Teams license, certainly check it out. Okay, I think that's most of the things we wanted to cover. Micah, anything missing?
We do have a couple of questions that we do probably need to go over. The first one is a little bit about our security and just, do we have any data persistence at all?
Okay, so yeah, great question. Something I'm asked in every single demo I offer. Before answering the question about persistence, just let me give you a bit of context. Any tool, Prowritingaid, Grammarly, whoever it is, dealing with this level of machine learning is doing it using cloud hosting. Okay, we all transmit text. You cannot do this analysis locally on your local machine. So we all transmit text to our servers. Our cloud hosting provider is Microsoft Azure. In the West US, so we do all of our analysis in the US, text is encrypted during that transmission. The important difference is where we analyze your text, there is no data persistence. And that means immediately after it's analyzed, it's deleted. We do not store your text. We don't need to, and we also don't need the rights or a license to use your writing, which many other tools out there do. Even if you don't realize you're signing up to them, that's what they do. They will claim that's because that's how they train their machine learning models. For us, that's not necessary because we do our model development and we train our models using large volumes of data that we acquire from professional editors. So the advantage is we don't have to store or save any text, and we don't have to have any rights to use your text because we don't use it. So from a security and privacy point of view, yeah, it's totally got you covered.
Your writing is 100% yours, and literally the only thing that is ever stored is if you are in the web editor and you save a document. And that is not because we need access to that for our models. That is because if we are going to provide you access to a saved document, we've obviously got to be able to pull it back out of the database. So we do not use that for any kind of machine training, anything like that. Your writing is always yours.
Yeah, and a good point on that, Micah, just to mention, if you're part of a team, if you have a large team license or you're looking at acquiring a team license, we can actually turn that web editor off. So that web editor can be disabled at a team's level by us. So that prevents any kind of saving of documents whatsoever.
And then we also have on-premise deployments if you're in a particularly sensitive business. Let's say you're in finance or something that everything must be done within your premises servers. We can also talk about that. And in that case, you would just need to arrange a demo with Tom to chat a little bit about our on-premise deployments. All right. Well, Tom, our other question may be a little bit of a tricky one, and it is about our sticky sentence threshold. And this is, how did we arrive at 60% being the threshold for what is considered a quote-unquote sticky sentence?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's probably a question that actually needs to go to our NLP team. So I think computational linguists and natural language processing team who spend hours and hours in the data that we analyze and we collect, and we've been doing this since 2011. But it's basically based on their research. Yeah, so it's I can't give a kind of a more definitive answer than that, but it's based on research where we look at engagement with language based on those glue words. Yeah. But it's
typically the NLP team, for any report they're coming up with or anything like that, they'll look at a huge corpus of data of writing of all sorts of different kinds. Let's say they're looking at academic writing, they'll have a corpus of academic documents in which they'll set certain settings, and that's where you'll see a lot of where our goal settings will come from and things like that, is just all the research that they've done and all the processing that they've done. I mean, it can sometimes be hundreds, if not thousands, of documents.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Tom, I think that wraps us up for the Q&A, which is fantastic because we are right on time for 45 minutes.
Fantastic. Okay.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, if you pop up with any other questions, feel free to email them to hello@prowritingaid.com, HELLO@prowritingaid.com. And we hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks all.
Bye.